r/AskReddit. What was your biggest not going back now moment? When I was younger, letting my older cousin talk me into a canoe ride down a flooded river. We'd planned it days in advance, but there was a lot of heavy rain in the area and the normally calm river was near flood level and quite rough. I really didn't want to do it, but I didn't want to let him down either, so I still went. I knew as soon as we saw the river this was a terrible idea. The whole thing was a shit show, and I honestly though we were going to die. We had no control, and at one point we got stuck nose down, and a large rock, knowing if we tipped out we were drowning. We somehow made it out, and to the shore where we walked back with the canoe. Rule number 1 with any kind of paddle/unpowered water sport, if you have any doubts, stop. Even in a shallow river, that thing flips and conks you on the head, you drown. Wear your PFD, and follow your gut. Me taking pictures of the North Korean military. If I was caught I would be in a prison camp now. They do not check SD cards? They do. I sneaked a blank SD card in, and store all the interesting pictures in the spare SD card. My other SD card, filled with normal pictures, was checked by the border guards. Every time I solo traveled and arrived in a new country. Same here. Also, solo moving to a new country. My plane touched the ground at about midnight in Stockholm, and I was like, damn, I'm 23 and I live alone in Stockholm. No going back now. So how's it going now? Thank you for asking. I'm 25 now, my boyfriend moved here with me a while later, and I clawed my way up to my dream job. By far the hardest and best decision I've ever made, I hope it keeps rewarding me. Canoeing over a waterfall. Yeah, stick to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to. First time I did a waterfall I thought I was gonna die. I'd been whitewater kayaking for over a year, had all my safety trained friends there with me, yet that feeling of going over and looking down at the hole just made me go, yep, I've gone too far. I hopped a freight train once, and the moment it hits 15 to 20 miles per hour, you're just along for the ride. But the real no going back moment came when the train stopped on a siding outside Winnemucca. After waiting there for like 5 hours, I decided to walk into town and get some ice cream sandwiches. As soon as I got 50 yards from the train, I realized if it starts rolling now, I'll be too far away to chase it down. I'll just be stuck in this town for a while. Edit. For you kids out there, riding freight trains is dangerous and illegal, and dirty and loud and unreliable. Don't do it. Train surfing is fun though. Just don't get busted. Also bring gear with you in case you decide to stay in a town for a day or so, or miss a train. I've gone from Indianapolis, Indiana to Portland, Oregon, and then caught a plane back to Illinois, and caught a ride for a short road trip home before. Stepping off that sandbar I could barely reach to swim out to the girl, caught in a riptide, and not knowing how a riptide worked. It took what felt like hours, but, spoiler alert, we made it. Too early in the season for lifeguards. I remember calling out to people walking their dogs on the beach, but we were so far out they didn't even look towards us. I'm sure she is eternally grateful that you took that step. Mountain biking with some friends on a new trail, which wasn't even a bike trail. We hiked most of the way up, since it was too steep to ride up. Carried our bikes all the way up. Rested at the top for a bit, and then rolled over the edge. I remember as my front tire crested, and gravity started taking over I thought, there's no way I'm stopping now, unless a tree stops me. I know a similar feeling. I was mountain biking too, and out of some really dumb instinct I pulled the front brake way too hard. It wasn't my bike, so I didn't know it well. Luckily I didn't break anything, but when I started taking off it was a really bad feeling. Parachute jump. My life is now no longer in my hands. First time I went skydiving, was a tandem jump, and the guy told me on the ground, once we get in the door we'll rock back and forth 3 times. On the 3rd time forward just roll out the door. So, me being the trusting sort thought that was a solid plan. We get up to altitude, open the door, I put my feet on the little platform and cross my arms, just like he told me to. The ducker rocked back once, and pushed us out the door immediately. My only thought was, that wasn't 3. Oh duck, we're falling. Getting in the ambulance after suffering a grand mal seizure from alcohol withdrawals. When I finally said enough is enough, and decided I needed to quit drinking, before it killed me, I thought I could detox on my own as I was terrified of hospitals. I was wrong. I spent a week detoxing in the ICU, and now, almost a full year later, I'm still very happily sober, and I'm completely thriving. I've witnessed 2 friends seize from alcohol withdrawals, it's crazy. One of my friends fell back into alcohol and nearly died from liver failure. Through some sort of a miracle he survived and is doing well. I can remember having what was supposed to be our last conversation on the phone. He wasn't supposed to make it through the weekend. Good job, I'm happy for you. When I was about to get on the plane to my first semester of med school, my dad, never one for sentiment, said, well, you're now actually worth more dead than alive, don't screw this up. The feeling when the plane takes off, knowing there's no turning back. It all depends on you. A scary feeling that is. When I ask my crush if she is ready for a relationship with me. The 2 hours I waited for a reply took forever. Also sadly she said no. Hey bro, it's better to have a crack at it and fail than to just sit in limbo. At least you had the bollocks to try, and now you know. It's much better to know than to look back in the future and wonder what if. Silver lining, if she took 2 hours to reply, at least she respects you enough to take time composing a reply. Walking into a MMA fight and the cage closes behind you. How did it go? Pretty okay I would say. I got punched in the face a lot, but subbed my opponent with an armbar. It was just an amateur level fight, but you learn a lot even there. Like you don't really hear your coach, you are way too consumed by what's going on, at least in the first few fights. Also, you can't really improvise, so a game plan is pretty important, because you will just revert to the basics you practiced. Also, you get ducking tired as duck. Just stuff you don't really understand if you're never in a fight. Here, try this hot wing. Took a bite, and for the next 18 hours, I could only focus on how this was a crime against humanity. And for those now asking, it was the last dab 30 on a drumstick. It was coated all over. I just ate one big bite. And then I went and shoved my head under a cold shower. Then, it was bed and bathroom for several hours as I threw up most of it, but some got digested. Somehow I managed to forget that spicy food hurts coming out every single time I eat it. It's all sunshine and buttercups until I'm crowning on the toilet and it feels like every atom in the log of shit has its own little shank that they are aching to use. The positive pregnancy test. We were trying, but seeing the test my first thought was honestly, oh shit, what have we done? He's now 8 months old, and it is the best, but still the scariest, decision we ever made. I made a budget yesterday to figure out how much I'd need to move out. If I work 2 more hours than planned at a starter job I've lined up, I could do it easily, with all the optional expenses. That's when it hit me that I'm not in college anymore, and I actually could have the money to live independently. One piece of advice, build up some savings before you move out. Like 3 to 6 months of rent savings. A bit dark, but when I took a bunch of pills in a suicide attempt. It was around 10 PM on a Tuesday night, and I had just gotten into an argument with my mom. I laid down in my bed and thought about my life, considered asking my mom to take me to the hospital, but decided against it. I thought, welp, this is it. I'm dying. Then I fell asleep. I took more than the lethal dose, but somehow woke up in the morning, slow, but perfectly fine. I consider it a glitch in the matrix, but one I'm grateful for. This was in August 2019, and I'm doing a lot better now. Still struggling, but not suicidal. This is your second chance. You're here for a reason and need it. Please stay strong. During takeoff on my first ever flight at the age of 30, I have a real intense fear of heights. It's funny, I've recently, over the last 10 years or so, developed a fear of heights. It really only applies on balconies or tall bridges, but in an airplane it's like I don't care. It's weird. While motorcycling through Vietnam, it was getting late, and I was running low on fuel. Too low to turn back to the previous town. If that wasn't bad enough, my bike rack broke. Luckily, a kind man and his daughter stopped to help. He knew no English outside of "I can fix." So I followed him. I wore my bags and held the rest in my lap. Entering the town, my jaw dropped. It was complete calamity. The streets were filled with people carrying 2x4s, rocks, and bottles. Literally hundreds of people. It was like a war zone, with people smashing scooters and cars on fire, people yelling and fighting. A few individuals were running for their lives with mobs in tow. I can still vividly see one man's face as he looked over his shoulder and read. There were too many people to drive through, so I had to slow down to a crawl. All I kept thinking was, please don't notice me. Please don't rob me and smash my face in. Please know I'm with this kind man and his daughter. The moment lengthened as a few of the town folk started to notice me. I was scared shitless, but produced a warm smile. The smile wasn't returned. The kind man looked back, and those who were taking interest in me noticed. Can't help but think it helped. We finally breached the throng of people and pulled down an alleyway to his place. I still didn't feel safe, but I needed gas and my rack fixed. I tried to ask the man why all these people were fighting one another. He just smiled and made the drink gesture. He fixed my rack, gave me some gas, and wouldn't take any money as payment. However, like Christmas, the kids receive money, so I gave his daughter a fat wad of cash. With his blessing. About 45 minutes later I arrived safely at my hostel in Vanna. Moving to Europe. For my husband, it was moving home. For me, yeah, nope. But I have a rare disease and American insurance was about to actually kill me. Kept denying medications. I was getting worse and worse, and he managed to get an amazing job in a great city to try to save my life. So 5 years ago, we are 2 hours into our flight there, the flight where we are moving forever, and I was too sick to visit first or anything, so I've never seen it before, and I'm realizing I'm not actually well enough to fly back to the US. Who knows when I'll see anything or anyone from again, and this is it, and suddenly, I'm just a bit panicking on. Like, what is plane? Where is air? The flight attendant was offering me a cup of tea at that almost exact moment and I just stared at my husband, who is a former Marine, and has done all of these insane things, and he looked at me and goes, take the tea. I felt like an idiot version of Neo in the Matrix. If you take the tea, the flight keeps going, and you see how far this rabbit hole goes. If you don't take the tea, this poor flight attendant stands here looking like a ducking idiot for even longer. So anyway, I took the tea from the dude, and then I guess it worked, because who can panic while trying to make tea? Turns out it was truly the point of no return. It's been 5 years. The insurance is much better than the US. They've kept me alive when I definitely would have died, but I'm too sick to actually leave. I couldn't even go home for my grandmother's funeral. So, shit, there really was no going back. Unless something kicks in, new treatments etc, I doubt I'll ever see home again. Hiking, knowing that severe weather is on the way. I got about 8 miles in when it started. Dense woods, but rain was heavy enough that I couldn't see 10 feet in front of me. Crossed a small creek halfway through, which on my way back turned into a river from flash floods. I found a somewhat large rock sticking out from a hill and huddled under that for about 15 minutes while lightning struck close enough to hurt my ears and seriously rumble in my chest. Ended up having to follow the creek upstream until it got small enough to cross, which turned what was originally 2 miles of hiking trail into probably another 8 through raw forest, maybe more as it was pitch black when I got back to my car and I had started at noon. Spent those hours bawling my eyes out and slipping in mud. LMAO. Easily in the top 5 most terrifying experiences in my life.